There's no guarantee that if the book exists, that Harvard owns a copy of it, but it's actually not outside the bounds of possibility that they would. So China, let's try China, do China patrol boats. That's not exactly what we're looking for, but I'm kind of trying to figure out where to start. And now I will say I don't like a lot of what we're finding here. So I would like to shift it to only the library catalog. I don't want to look at all the other things that they have. So when I look at this, I see 22 results, which is something else. I think China piracy, piratical attacks on British vessels on Chinese waters, piracy in the vicinity of Hong Kong. This is probably not